All right, another exciting day here out on the dock. Really, episode number 3, and again, I'm joined by Mike. Happy to have him with us. Mike, the last time we got together, we talked a little bit about boat ports, and that's what we're going to spend our time talking about today. And I know
Yeah,
you mentioned it was one of your favorite
it is.
products.
It is.
You identified a product, and we'll go through kind of all those today. But as we kind of before we dive into the actual product, let's talk a little bit about why look at a wave armor boat port maybe versus a traditional lift or hydraulic lift, cable lift, and kind of what some of those things are.
The number one reason. Good morning, Moon. The number one reason you want to think about our boat ports versus the conventional lift is because when you get water fluctuations like we're having today out at this lake in Buffalo, the water levels have gone up substantially, and you'll get into situations what they call dry docking, where if you got a boat with a conventional lift, you'll get stuck underneath the canopy where you can't get it down low enough, or vice versa. If the water level goes down so darn low, you can't get the boat port off, or the boat off of the port. Where you get into our ports like we got, it doesn't matter what the water fluctuations are.
So, Mike, you bring up a good point, and that is, there's that upper side of the water fluctuating all the way up, but you also have that downside, right? So, some of our southern partners where, um, you've got the full pool versus not full pool, right? And the energy companies dictate kind of where that's at.
Correct.
And a lot of times you'll see where they can't get their boat off as well as because of the water level being so low, which our product floats on top allows them to do that. So that's very good points. So talk a little bit about how do you determine what boat and what port when you start looking at wave armor?
Talk a lot about the weights. Number one, when you got to figure out what size motors they have, what the length of the boat is, what the width of it, what the beam of that boat is too. Because you talk about like our 170 220 or 170 220 has got a 7'6" width on it. You don't want to put a boat on it that's got an 8.5-foot beam or 8-foot beam on that port. You want to stay with, if you've got something in that direction, you want to stay with probably the Pro 8 because it's got an 8-foot beam on it. If you're going to do a side mount attachment or post attachment brackets, the port won't work on a 170 220 if you got an 8-foot 2 beam on it.
Sure.
It doesn't work.
Are there certain hulls that work better than others, or kind of how's that consideration?
A V-hull boat works perfect on our ports. Okay, when you take a typical Lund, Lumacraft, or a Ranger, or a Skeeter, those type of bass boats as well, work extremely well on our ports. When you get into the Boston Whalers, the Carolina Skiffs, those types of boats give us a little bit of a struggle because they got what they call a W-style hull on them. They will work in most applications, but what you get in there, you'll have to maybe get a little bit of dragging going on in the entrance area of the port. We do not have a bigger wheel, or you can adjust the wheels higher or lower to give more clearance on these ports. So those boats give us a little bit of a struggle at times, but most of those clients don't have other options out there unless they do a conventional lift. If you take our competition out there, whether or not it's a jet dock or an easy dock, or can dock or any of the other port companies out there, they don't have it either. So you're dragging worse on them than you are on ours. We can get some roller configurations for them W-style hulls better.
Sure.
But
sure. And again, even on some of the smaller boats, right, we'll see somebody move into maybe a PWC port on those 12-foot or 14-foot boats, right?
Yep.
And you can use those as well, even though that's not what we're kind of addressing today. We're really addressing the other stuff. But again, what are the key things that a customer should bring to their dealer when they're going to decide what wave armor port they want to purchase?
What the weight of that boat is, what the beam of that boat is, and what motor they're using.
Perfect. Those three things would be key, right, to
Key
help
things.
get the fit and and again, pictures and specs on those things
Absolutely.
all help. A lot of times manufacturers will publish a dry weight.
Yep.
And we're really looking at that, really how that boat's going to be loaded,
Correct.
right?
We want the wet weight. We want it full of fuel. We want it full of maximum capacity of people and everything else, so we can identify whether or not it's going to be a good fit for them.
Sure.
Because sometimes we'll even take a center console boat, and that center console boat might have the right beam and everything else to fit our niche. However, once you fill that thing full of people, you might be looking at moving them up to the X24 when he would actually been a perfect candidate for the Pro 8 otherwise. Yeah. And so I look into those, a lot of the applications where we can have them fit a little bit better.
Makes sense. So why don't you just kind of walk through the lineup a little bit as far as the different products that Wave Armor offers, and kind of walk through each of those. I know that you mentioned last time we got together, there was one that was near and dear to your heart. So that's probably where we'll start.
We'll start there. Okay, so the 17220 has really been flawless for me this year, with the fact that we've done that conversion for the Sea-Doo switches. Brian and I've spent an immense amount of time trying to get up all the exact fits for the client, so we know exactly where to set their bow stops, how to set their power launch assist. Everything has been absolutely perfect for us this year on that. So that one has been worked very well. Now, when you get rid of the conversion out of that, Ben, that'll work out very well for your Lumacrafts, your Lunds, your Crestliners, all of your lighter fishing boats. Those will work extremely well. And then from there, then you're going to move up into the Pro 8. The Pro 8 is going to be 8 feet wide and 21 feet long. And so that unit works better for the bigger bass boats, the Skeeters, the Rangers, and things like that. When you get the bigger Rangers with the bigger motors and the longer boats, then I'm probably going to be moving into what we call our X24. And the X24 capacity on that one gets you up to 8,000 pound capacity. It's a 3-piece unit. It's 24 feet long. It's 10 feet wide. We will not accept any step hulls, by the way, either. So keep in mind, if you've got the step hulls, we're not going to be a good candidate for you with the Wave Armor products at this time. We are designing something, but we don't have something out the mix right now for the step hulls.
Sure. So again, from a lineup standpoint, you got a Pro 170, 17-foot, 7.5-foot beam. So again, those smaller fishing boats. From there, you jump into the Pro 220, which is 22 feet, 7.5-foot wide, right? And those are both hybrid type ports, right? So they work with boats as well as Sea-Doo switch, and they've been proven, to your point, in the Sea-Doo switch. Pro 8, which is going to be 8 feet wide and 21 feet long.
21 feet long,
And then the Extreme 24, which is 10 feet wide by 24 feet long.
Now you can do an X32 too. You can add one more section to that for the guys. I've got people out in Puerto Rico that have put the longer boats on them, and they've got more buoyancy capacity, and it'll take the longer boats and the bigger boats. But that's really, I mean, around in our Midwest area, we're not going to see too many of them. But in the Puerto Rico area and Florida, there's some of them.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about jet-powered boats, Sea-Doo switches, whatever you want to call it, and kind of what does it look like using, our product on those types of on those ports.
So again, that's when you drive on, you're going to use some decent horsepower going on. I mean, you're looking at 28 to 3,500 RPMs going on with Sea-Doo switch. And then once that Sea-Doo switch gets pushed off, the way we have it set up for you, it'll get pushed off so that the impeller now is in the water when that power launch is always made 100% 24 inches out and start going back in again. Now you put your motor, start your motor up, put it in reverse. It's going to start cavitating and grabbing water into the injector and or into the impeller and start pulling yourself off. So again, it's a power loss assist. It's not a power launch.
And that's a key accessory, right? The power launch assist. I mean, and that's ultimately what you're going to use for a jet boat. And you can use that on any one of the 4 ports, right? So you can use it across the X24 all the way down to the Pro 170. So truly, there's solutions out there to help ease in that launching, assist in that launching should you have it that way. But
and a lot of times people are talking about, well, why would I need a power launch? Why do I need a power launch assist? If I don't have a jet boat, if I got enough motor, yeah, you probably don't. But if you're sitting there in a marina situation where you're literally backed up to your neighbor and you don't want to use extensive amount of horsepower getting off and create a whole bunch of water turbulence, that the power launch assist will help you get off that without disrupting your neighbors.
Absolutely.
So that helps out as well, and we've done a lot of that as well. Now, we didn't talk about this because once we get into the boat ports, we're always talking about the pontoon ports as well. So the power launch assist also goes into that unit as well. So it's one more unit.
Yeah, good point.
Yep.
Talk to me a little bit about like the makeup. So I know that on a boat port, we use wheels, right?
Yep.
And we've got different ways to set those wheels.
That's correct.
There's also a customization, if you have it, of that port to that boat. We talked about the weight, the beam, and the horsepower, but there's also a component of that requires some customization.
Customization, right? Yep, every one of them.
Go into that a little bit.
I did bring a few props in here for us. I mean, so we've got the red wheel that everybody's going to see on our ports. Now, this is our standard wheel that's up on the very top of the port. It's a harder durometer rubber. And then the entrance area is going to get your blue wheel, and your blue wheel is a softer durometer wheel. This is more of a bumper, if you will, when you're coming onto the port. So you're coming in, you're going to come nestled into this. You can probably see it in the photo is actually you can push the wheel a little bit easier on these versions. So So the first blue wheels in the entrance, you're not adjusting in and out much at these on all. Even though there's a 3/4 inch bushing inside of these, you're not going to be adjusting the blue wheel much at all. Okay, but when you get into this red wheel, there's going to be numerous different pockets on that port. Now you'll be taking all these bushings and you can adjust them in and out to fit the requirements. So this wheel does not hit any of the ribs on your bottom of your hull or your boat. So take a look at that and verify that, lay underneath it, make sure your boat isn't sitting kittywampus on the port. And if it is, it's more than likely you've got a rib sitting on top of a wheel.
And you just did a recent video, right, that we published on YouTube that talks about how to adjust your wheels on a PWC.
Yep.
A lot of those same theories and strategies apply.
Exact same
right?
theories.
Exact same
theories. You know, you'll get different pockets where you'll be able to entirely move this thing from one side to the other, or move it out further if you wanted to.
Sure.
And you can also do numerous adjustments. You can actually have double sets of wheels in some different weird hulls. You got to use your mind a little bit when you're putting these things together. I've done a lot of these, and some of them I can't stay up with all of the manufacturers of boats out there. Every one of them come up with something different, and I just try to do my best to keep everybody educated on what we can do.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of times we get asked from dealers and customers alike, like, does my boat fit on this port, right? And it goes back to those three key things again. We can't tell you exactly every single boat manufacturer, but what we can do is give you a very good recommendation based upon, again, the beam,
Yep.
the length, and really the horsepower,
Yep.
and then obviously the total weight too. But
Yep. We also have the very, very narrow spacers as well, that we get into adjusting to move them just 1/8 of an inch. So these bushings will work very well for this. So
perfect. I think one more thing too, Mike, is, you know, sometimes we get asked, like, how can you use our port, Wave Armor's port, with a competitor's dock, or how do you mount it, right? So let's talk a little bit about kind of the options in that space.
Absolutely. So when we built a new bracket now that'll connect link, what they call it, and that one is designed so it'll hook on one of our competitors' docks and directly will hook up our Wave Armor products directly onto theirs without having to modify anything to their dock or modify anything to ours to make it work. If you're doing a additional wood floating dock, for example, we have all of the mounting brackets that'll hook onto that wood floating dock as well, that you can hook ours onto the front, or side mounts, what we call our side mount kit, that work extremely well for our PWC ports, our inline jet ski ports, our Pro 170 220, and also our pontoon port. It works extremely well to do a side mount kit with that kit as well.
So what I think I hear you saying to me is there's no dock that we can't work with, right?
Very much so. There isn't many that have overcome my knowledge and what we've been able to make out there to make them work.
Sure.
So, yep. So.
Sure. So again, it's the front mount. So if there's a will, there's a way, and we've got the parts and really the assortment or portfolio to connect to those various docks. So again, don't allow that to be a limitation, right? I'm purchasing a Wave Armor port.
We definitely would like them to buy all Wave Armor product, but if they've got their product out there and they want to adapt to that and slowly move into the Wave Armor product, we're all on board to make that happen as well.
Absolutely. So. I think the only other thing there's a couple things I want to talk about yet and kind of get your opinion on. First is, you know, I think with boats, a lot of times people want something to protect it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we get into some of the canopy things and some of those things. So I'll let you talk a little bit about kind of the assortment there and kind of what we have for options.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. So we've moved into all of our protector canopies. So we have them for both versions now. All the PWC ports, it has to be a pair. So if you do a pair of Pro 5s, we've got them for that. If you got a pair of Pro 6s, we have the canopies for that. We have the Pro 6 Maxes. We have the wide bodies, which is 14 foot long. We also have them for the 170 220.
Yep.
We also have them for the Pro 8. We have them for the X24. We have them for the pontoon. And every one of those versions, we've got different drape heights. So 24-inch tall drape all the way down to a 48-inch tall drape. Just absolutely perfect protection for your PWCs out there. And they've worked very, very well out there. And the people out there have been extremely happy with what they've been seeing, and so user-friendly. And even in some pretty good winds, they've been holding up extremely well for us.
So again, you don't have to put that boat cover on. You could actually just go underneath one of these protector frame canopies or protector frames from Wave Armor, and you get that protection. So again, total solution, right? From how you're going to connect it to how you're going to protect it, right? You know what I mean? And it's 100% kind of done in there. You know, since we're on the canopy thing, let's talk. We talked about beams, right?
Yep.
And we talked about now a canopy. Talk to me how those beams, you know, and widths of these ports may limit some of those applications and things to consider. And again, when we talk about that consideration limitation, we know that we also have the ability to mount it to a dock, right, in a slip, so that we can overcome that. But just things to consider as they're making that journey.
Correct. Yeah. So if you were, for example, if you were back to that beam we're talking about, 8 foot wide, if you put a boat, you could put a boat literally on a Pro 170 220, for example, that has a 8 foot wide beam. If you're mounting it up in the front, and there's no pole configuration difference. However, if you're going to put a canopy on that thing, there's no way that's going to work, because now the canopy will mount to the side of that 170 220. Your boat has got an 8'5" beam, for example, and you're a 7'6" wide port. It's going to hit, and you're going to run into that thing at all times. So if you put it on a Pro 8 at that point, you'll eliminate that problem by putting it on a Pro 8, because the post attachment bracket for the canopy will offset it out far enough
for an 8 foot
for
beam.
an 8-foot beam.
8-foot beam, but 8.5 foot
8-foot beam. Now we're going to have to look at that.
Yeah.
You know, we have side extensions. We have numerous things that we can do. We're going to be making new canopies coming up in the future for different size ports. We're always going to be innovating on this. But
yeah, and I think that's a key piece, is just ask questions, interact with your dealers, with us. You know, we've got a customer service number. Our dealers can reach Mike and myself. And truly, we'll try to come up with a solution that works for your application.
Yeah.
The other common theme that I see happening is the bow stop, right? And where do you set the bow stop, right? And some of those things, when you're first setting it up, there's a little bit of a tweak. So kind of walk me through some of those
things. Thank you for
things.
reminder on that, Ben. Yeah, because what happens is what I want clients to do is have another set of eyes out there when they're setting their port up. Get the boat up there. There's that V at the entrance when you're coming in with your boat. There's the V in there. I do not want your lower unit coming into contact of the bottom of that lower V. I want them to be back about 10 to 12 inches on the back of that. And I do that on purpose, because if they come in there and they crank their motor left or right when they're on their port, there's a very good possibility that, depending on the size of their prop, they could actually turn their motor and turn it right into the port and have some catastrophic damage that was out of our control. You know, so the V is made so that the front of the hull of the keel of your boat is to get into that and get nestled into that port. That's what that V is for. And then when you come in and try to get your lower unit to drop in there, that is not what it was designed for. You got to stay back about a good 8 to 12 inches from the back end of that port.
Yeah, and I think it's for the captain too. Just always keep that motor straight, right? When you're coming off and on. I know that we just had an install by one of our dealers, and the customer was super excited, you know, just ecstatic with the port. And he let his grandson drive it. And literally 3 hours into ownership, his grandson turned the motor and did exactly that with that user error, where they actually cut the port with the prop. So it's kind of always a fine line, and we bring it up just to make sure that we can save any hassle that somebody may go through, any hardship that somebody may go through, because there's nothing worse than you got a brand new port, and then hours later you're calling us and saying, hey,
and we know exactly what it is. When people start seeing it, or when people see it and they do the damage, or the damage was done, we can actually tell how it was taken care of, or how it happened. But there's so many of those situations out there, and we just want you to be careful. We just want you to be careful. You know.
Yeah, I think that was kind of what I had, just high level talking boat ports today. Anything else that you had kind of from your chair?
That's really about it. I mean, there's so many questions that I get on a daily basis about boat ports and fine fit and finish, and trying to figure out how we can adjust them to make them work a little bit easier. Keep in mind when you're setting these wheels up, they don't have to be in line. They don't have to be in line. So if you're having more difficulty with your boat, for example, getting off, and you want to take and move these wheels down a little bit to maybe to raise the front end of that port up a little bit to make it easier to get off, you can try that with the wheels. We also have buoyancy boosters available. So if in fact that you have a real light motor onto our port, and say for example, your boat is sitting completely level and it's had a little bit more of a tough time getting off than you would like, you could put a pair of buoyancy boosters up front to lift the front end up to give a little bit of a rake right out of the bat. Or conversely, if it was the other way around, where you had a big motor and the back end of your boat is just lightly touching the water, put a pair of buoyancy boosters in the back, Ben, and you'll lift that thing up to compensate for your motors. So
Good tips.
we've got numerous tricks that we have that can make it work better for you. Okay?
Perfect. Perfect. Well, with that, you may live by the water, but do you live on the water?